Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of For the Love of Marketing. Today, we're going to be talking about social media, the past, the current, and the future, and all good things about that. Delighted to welcome Ashley Friedlein today, who I've known for a little while now, the founder of the fantastic e-consultancy, which is an organization I've lent on many times in my career, and more recently founder of Guild, which is a professional communities and networking social app, which is doing some really great stuff in the social media space for professionals. So don't forget to like and subscribe. And in the meantime, let's crack on. Hey, Ashley, how you doing?
Very well. Thanks for having me, Simon.
Good. Thanks for joining us straight from the Brazilian rainforest there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, the lush vegetation of Shoreditch.
Great. So look, I mean, you've done some fantastic things over the years. And as I say, for me, e-consultancy is a website that I've lent on so many times for some really great insights and fantastic. But more recently, I know you've launched Guild, which I've used myself for bringing people together. But before we get into what Guild is and what it's doing, what do you think? I mean, this is such an open question, but what do you think of social media at the moment? There's so much going on. There's so many opinions. Where are we? Where is social media right now? What's your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, that is a big question. Well, I guess, I don't know. I mean, you and I say have been around a bit longer than we maybe care to mention, but I kind of think back over where we've got to where we are and maybe where it might be going. But, sort of the early internet where you had, or post its sort of military incarnation, you had academics exchanging sort of information and stuff. So you had those sort of early communities, not necessarily social media because they weren't public. But then I remember the sort of late 90s and sort of e-consultancy at its heart, we had a forum, one of those old threaded web forums or like bulletin boards. And that was like really good, actually. And I think back to that kind of quite fondly. And also where you had active comments in our blog and stuff. So a lot of that sort of social interaction, as it were, happened on the website in a forum or a blog comments and things. And then social media came along and sadly public social media, sort of Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook and things, and sadly kind of killed off a lot of that forum and blog comment activity because these big platforms, there was the sort of excitement or vanity maybe of going viral and getting to a big audience. But also their UX was probably better, their tech was more sophisticated because they just could do a better job of it. So you had this whole area, that was the Web 2, which was sort of public social media. But I think what we've been seeing now is a desire to regain, I guess, some of that sort of privacy, or at least there are communities and groups and sort of social gatherings which are happening in a more private or curated or quality controlled, smaller kind of way. And so you've got obviously all that sort of dark social stuff, like a lot of activity in messaging apps, for example, WhatsApp and WeChat and Telegram, Signal, all sorts, and Guild, as you said, is designed as a messaging app. So yeah, there's a lot of that sort of dark, private, not public social media stuff that's happening. And then of course there are, I mean, in terms of sort of formats, we've moved from what was sort of text and maybe pictures and links and things and documents to voice, like with Clubhouse and things, video with TikTok and etc. So yeah, but I'd say that the sort of biggest trend at the moment is a bit of a backlash against the sort of more public social media because of its too noisy, too toxic, too addictive, too algorithmically driven, etc. So a sort of desire to try and take back a little bit of control, I think.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I mean, we're actually doing some work in my company at the moment with a business who are launching a private social network in a specific niche. Doesn't compete with Guild, so don't worry. But really good space, and it's for exactly that reason that these guys have conceived the app, is that people are looking for a bit of privacy and a bit of meaning within their social network. And for me, I remember the first days of Facebook, and as you say, showing our age a little bit, but I remember when that really started out, there was real connection with your friends and your family. Yeah. It was meaningful, and that's the majority of what you experienced was what really Facebook was designed to do, of bringing friends and family together and sharing moments. And I think my view over the last 15 years, that's really become a very commercialized platform that shows you what it wants to show you in order to monetize or to create certain behaviors. And that's no specific criticism of Facebook. I think it's true of all other platforms, but that is why I agree with you, there's a lot of this pushback coming. So tell me a little bit about Guild, because I know, as you say, that's part of breaking this mold, and I know you've had some really good success and growth with that over recent years. So what is it you're doing with Guild?
Yeah, well, it was actually the same. You mentioned e-consultancy, my first business, which was started in the late 90s. And actually that they're more similar maybe than they seem, in as much as I guess my passion is professional communities. And so that is people coming together to share and learn from each other, actually both online and offline, into events and training and things. And so e-consultancy started and existed for 3 years just as a web form, a side project I was doing whilst working at an agency. But so it was fundamentally, in my mind, was a community of sort of marketing people learning about digital marketing and e-commerce. Off the back of that, we ended up building a business which had, membership, paid subscription, training and events. So it became a kind of media business, B2B media business, but was at its core a community, professional community. And then, with Guild, what happened, I guess, was sort of inspired by two things. One was the huge growth in mobile. So initially mobile web, but then mobile apps, and in particular messaging. And, I was seeing more and more, like particularly WhatsApp in the West, being used for business stuff, like for senior leadership teams, maybe initially internally, but it was bleeding out into customers, suppliers, prospects and things. And on the one hand, I thought, well, it's an interesting learning that messaging is being used so much in this way for small groups and communities and just to do business. And I kind of get why, because mobiles, it's easy and it's quick and it's always on you. It cuts through where email doesn't, has push notifications, all that kind of stuff. So I thought, well, that's a fairly obvious kind of trend, but I think the world's going to continue to go more mobile. But the other was, I felt there needed to be an antidote to a lot of the sort of more harmful and negative aspects of social media. And, WhatsApp's owned by Meta, obviously, Facebook as was. To be fair, WhatsApp's still a fairly clean experience. They had for ages talked about bringing in advertising. God only knows what they're actually doing with our data. But it did have, I just felt that something which was had a sort of a goodness at its heart, unlike most of Facebook, I fear, which was much more mobile focused as opposed to, say, LinkedIn. And actually, say LinkedIn groups, I think, have died a death. I mean, LinkedIn is super important for recruitment, sales and marketing, but I can't remember the last time I went to a LinkedIn group. Whereas, say, 10, 15 years ago, as you say, I was quite happily in a lot of, the early days of LinkedIn, I actually did feel like a member, whereas now I feel like a product. So yeah, the Guild is really born out of wanting to have a space or a place for people to run professional groups and communities, but which didn't have an advertising-led business model, because I think that leads to sort of bad behaviors and sort of exploitative use of data, but was also mobile-first experience.
That's great, and I think you're right. I think there's still a lot of people that connect with me because we're in the same groups on LinkedIn, but I can't imagine I've ever posted most of those groups. You join with the best of intentions and never actually really had a conversation in there. So I think there's work for LinkedIn to do there, and I think you're probably going to beat them to it in the meantime. So that's a good thing. One trend that's going on social at the moment, you mentioned audio, you mentioned video. Is short video is becoming such a massive trend right now, and it comes up in so many conversations, and I'm sure it's been in some of our recent podcasts and blogs, and it pops up everywhere in everything we do. And we've seen Instagram push their algorithm much more towards video. Obviously TikTok is out there doing video very heavily, and of course Facebook have made an announcement not too long ago about wanting to push more short video. There's YouTube Shorts now as well. I guess you probably had a number of thoughts about this over recent months and years, and it's not a new conversation by any means, but what's your view on the value of that? Because there's so much you can get across with video very quickly and very visually for people, which is really helpful, but it's not always convenient to watch video. It's not easy to create a lot of video content, and you can't really have backwards and forwards conversations in a social group on video either. So what's your thinking about where you think video should fit in?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I think it's a little bit nuanced. But I mean, I think TikTok really have caused video to explode, and also for Facebook and Google, I think, and YouTube. And Google has YouTube Shorts now, doesn't it? But I think they were caught slightly unawares, like the explosive growth of TikTok, and it's eaten into YouTube usage, like teenagers and stuff not looking at YouTube like they were, using more TikTok, Facebook equally. I don't think are necessarily doing as well in video as they maybe should be.
Mm.
But I think TikTok's actually increased the length of the videos over time, hasn't it? I mean, there's different sort of formats, but so it's not necessarily they're all getting shorter. It's sort of maybe growth of video more generally. But I think yeah, there's a whole, I mean, there's a number of things to consider. One is, obviously portrait versus landscape and things, whether you have captions or not, because sometimes you can't listen to the audio. But I think video clearly works well for entertainment type stuff, which is most of it's kind of TikTok. If it's sort of music and dancing and funny things, then video is super well suited to that and scrolling through and things. I think where I'm a bit less sort of sure of it is in, and say we're particularly more in sort of business professional stuff. If you think of sort of WhatsApp groups, even actually sort of friends and family WhatsApp groups, it still isn't that much video. It tends to be mostly text, maybe a bit of imagery, a forwarded thing, but it isn't all video. There are some people who leave the audio messages. Personally, I find that really annoying when someone leaves a voice message. That's quite big in other parts of the world, less so in the UK, because you can't kind of scan through it. I find it invasive in my attention. Think you left me a 10-minute voice message. I've now got to kind of listen through it, but maybe that's just me. But video is a little bit like that as well, where if you look on your LinkedIn feed now, almost certainly what will be coming up top is video, if not imagery. And actually, it's probably going to be quite a personal, emotional kind of story, which is sort of fine. But it's just the algorithms are favoritizing, obviously, the stuff which works in terms of getting engagement. And broadly, that is personal, emotional stories in video. Now, is that a good thing or bad thing? I don't know, but it's not what I would necessarily want to look at all the time. So if I'm wanting to have a slightly more practical, factual kind of thing, I don't need or want video. So, we at Guild, we do have video, but more for sort of video meetups and social, more like a sort of Zoom, Google Meet, Teams kind of experience for group conversations. And I think there it's good because it's just a bit more human and people-y, so just text, or sometimes in WhatsApp you can only see a mobile phone number. You've got no idea really who anyone is. Whereas I think video, obviously, it's not as good as meeting in person, but it's the next best thing. And then obviously imagery and text a little bit more transactional, informational, and work well for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's spot on. I think there's video, like you say, entertainment, great. I think also education, great. I mean, how to is obviously one of the biggest searched 2 words anywhere. So I think that it's great for that. But in terms of having real connections, and it's not as strong. I agree. So yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned humanity there, and that's something that I always talk a lot about with social media. I think I've always seen digital as really a channel to connect people together, as sort of a human. It's not really the digital age; it's the human age, is what I always say. The digital tools enable us to connect at a level we've never been able to before, to build bigger communities. How do you think we play that out more? Because one of the concerns in social over recent years has been it's quite fake, right? Donald Trump rode on the back of that a lot with the old fake news, but there is a lot of fakeness within social media. There's a lot of aspirational content, aspiring to be like celebrities who probably aren't even like how they're projected on these social channels, and people just sharing the successes in their lives, and then people following their friends getting depressed because they're thinking everyone's having a fantastic life, but of course they're only seeing it through that lens. And so there's a lot of that, but in reality, connecting humans together is incredibly powerful, and that's really what digital is for. So it's an odd question, I know, and I'm bouncing around all over the place with this one, but it goes through my mind all the time about is social good or is social bad, right? Should we be using social media to connect humanity, or is actually that always on social community element a problem? Can we manage it better if we remove some of the vanity and some of the the fakeness of it. I mean, do you have any thoughts about the good and the evil
Yeah,
of social media?
yeah, I have a lot. I mean, and ultimately, you do wonder whether it's a reflection of human nature, really, isn't it? And
Mm,
sometimes that shows things which you don't necessarily want to know, or makes you wonder whether humans are fundamentally good or bad. But anyway, the for
bigger
starters, I
question.
think there is a difference between what I think of social media and community. And
Yeah.
community gets bandied around. It seems a bit trendy again now, but I think there's a lot of sort of community washing, maybe if you call it that, going on, where the reality is, and it is in just terminology, but I would say in a lot of social media, what brands or whoever have, they're actually what I might call fans or followers. That's not a community. And in most cases, it's a broadcast, it's a one-way kind of interaction anyway. So
Mm,
fans or followers are, I'd say, not a community. I think often media businesses, publishers, event organizers talk about their community when actually it's an audience. And I think an audience is not a community either necessarily. Like you can have a whole load of listeners to your podcast or people reading your blog. That's not a community, really. It's an audience. Then you have a network, and even I think a network's different from community. Networks tend to be slightly more transactional. The benefit is for the individuals who take part in the network. Whereas a community, I think, has to have a sort of member-to-member element, and it's really there for a sort of collective benefit. So social media is a lot of ways is a personal self-expression, or it's a marketing channel or sales channel and stuff. In most cases, it isn't a community. So beyond that, I think it is, human. What are the kind of human emotions, motivations that these tools, platforms, whatever, what are they kind of playing on or playing to? Why are you posting this stuff? Why are you clicking like or whatever it is? And there's, it's psychology. There are certain things we as humans desperately desire, like a sense of belonging, a sense of self-worth, sense of purpose, sense of being something in the world, all these sorts of things. And I think that the bad side of social media is that it panders to or preys on those sort of less, less helpful, less the sort of the worst side of things. So our, sort of vanity, or like you're saying, the desperate desire to be keeping up with everyone else, projecting this sort of fake life. This leads all sorts to sort of, self-harm and bad things. And so the good thing, it's like, because social media, a lot of it is public, you are out on this, it is public, and therefore it is inevitably, you probably create a kind of manicured, curated version of yourself it could be for professional or personal. The thing I think is good about a lot of the private communities, and say it's certainly true in a lot of the guild ones, there's no real motivation to do that, because you've only got an audience of the people you're in the room with. So why show off? You'll just look like a knob. So it's a very different
I have to
kind
bleep
of
that.
reason. Like that, hopefully the reason you're contributing is because you genuinely care, want to help people.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a degree of you're building your personal brand. Yes, it's about, credibility and authority and status. In the professional world, we all want status as much as we do in our personal lives, I'm sure. So it's not all kind of completely good, but it's still, I think, slightly purer, better motivations than most of social media.
It's interesting. So, in terms of where social's going, I mean, I think you're right. I think it's actually a really, really nice way to phrase it there. That you've effectively got your sort of open social media, which is perhaps emotionally a bit darker, and then you've got your sort of networks, and then full-on community on the other side. I think it's a really nice way of putting it. Do you think, if we fast forward 10 years, do you think that these sort of dark, very I mean this in the nicest possible way, manipulated algorithms, sort of controlled algorithms, channels that we see today that are very much vanity and jealousy led, they have, do you think they still have their place in 10 years time, or do you alongside networks and communities, or do you see that actually people are going to get really fed up? There's obviously been some backlash and some sort of movement away from some of these channels, but very limited amount. Or do you see that people are going to get fed up with that and move much more towards meaningful private communities, or do you think it all just has its place and will always be that way?
I'd certainly believe, and indeed would like to think, that there will be more alternatives out there. And already, there are both in the sort of B2B world, like with Guild. There was, on the way, I saw a advert for a We Are 8, which is a sort of, again, a new social network that's sort of more about privacy and not the nasty big tech kind of thing. There's a new one coming called Curve I saw recently. There's Supernova. There's all sorts of, so, and some of those will succeed, some won't. So I think there will be a broader choice. I suspect ultimately, depending on you as an individual and your interests, and maybe also whether it's professional, personal, whatever, you will still have a mixture, basically. So you will have, your more kind of maybe private ones where you can be a bit more honest and open and trusting, and there's a more kind of genuine or meaningful relationships built there. But if you need reach and visibility and discovery and all that sort of stuff, I mean, if you're looking at it as a marketing funnel, your kind of awareness, brandy building, reach bit, then public social media, whichever one is best, one platform might be better than you for others based on, say, whether it's personal, professional, or even by geographies around the world. Then that is part of a sort of tool set, as it were, which you will need to do. So LinkedIn, that is my professional identity and my CV. I don't have a paper CV. I don't think most people do these days. It is my LinkedIn profile. And I do find LinkedIn valuable as a, contacts database, essentially sales and marketing and recruitment. But do I think it's for communities and professional communities? No. I mean, I'd say I think LinkedIn groups have died a death. But so it's not that it's not valuable. It definitely is, but it's just, it has changed a bit. So yeah, I think that it will end up being more of a kind of mixture.
LinkedIn, it sounds to me like you're saying LinkedIn is turning more into a job board where you happen to be able to talk to people in your network.
Well, no, I mean, I think LinkedIn, as I wrote to think that LinkedIn feels like it's becoming more like Facebook, in as much as it's a broader trend, I suppose. The blurring of the professional and the personal, has been happening anyway. It's partly generational. It's partly the pandemic, obviously. Here's us sitting in. Well, I am in an office. I'm not sure you are, but it's much more informal. And generally a move away from hierarchy and all that stuff, which is a good thing, I think. But that's coming through then in LinkedIn, which is, it feels slightly less professional maybe in the old-fashioned sense, which is say maybe not a problem. But I think the other, the interesting, the sort of broader macroeconomic trends, you have the creator economy, or the passion economy, as it sometimes gets called, but where people are having more portfolio roles, obviously remote work, you can work anywhere in the world more easily now. People have all got, looking at their side hustle, little project on the side. And I think a lot of those are quite community led, and as in they might have a little niche of expertise and they have a certain, customers or prospects they can bring together. So I think a trend, and, we see this on Guild as well, where people might, for example, if you imagine you could have 300 people paying you 20 quid a month to belong to your little community. That's, what is that, $6 grand a month, 70 grand a year? That's quite a good, and you can do it from anywhere in the world. That's starting to happen, I think, more, which I think that is actually really exciting. It's not social media, I would see more than as just a marketing engine or a form of marketing for that sort of community-led passion economy, creator economy business. But that's, I think that's, we see that happening, and I think that's really exciting, actually.
Good. Look, that's great. There's so much stuff in there, actually. And so look, I think Guild is fantastic. I think you're doing some really great work with that platform, and I'd encourage anyone who's in a professional space that is looking to connect with some meaningful networks to sign up to Guild. It really is a really powerful app. Some really great people on it, lots of advice being exchanged. It's really, really great. So so anyone who wants to have a little go at that, definitely do that. It's really powerful. Available. Do you want to give me a little plug, Ashley, where it's available?
Well, you can, it's web and app, so you can either go to the app stores or Google Play and search for Guild, and try and avoid the Guild Warcraft or whatever it is. And yeah, I know, bit of tricky to compete with that. Or guild.co. Hopefully if you Google Guild, will come up somewhere near the top. But yeah, guild.co, you can sign up via the web or via the app. And then there's we've got over 5,000 groups across a whole range of niches. Not all of them. Most of them are private and hidden, though, I have to say. But you can. There's a directory of discoverable public groups on there. So hopefully you'll find something that you like and is relevant to you. And if not, then create your own.
Perfect. Great plug. Fantastic. Yeah, strongly recommend that. Thanks, Ashley, so much for being a guest today. It's really, really valuable stuff. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.